It's February 12th. The Mets have filled out their bullpen, and we have a survey that we got 500 responses on. Let's do an episode of Shea Station.
Shea Station, Jerry and Charlie. Shea Station, Jerry and Charlie, riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull your members, now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shea Station.
Welcome back to the Shea Station podcast. Our third episode back. Still doesn't feel real. Still feels brand new, like Jerry said last time. I'm Jolly, a.k.a. Jack, a.k.a. Jolly. And joining me is Jerry Blevins, fresh off the Super Bowl and fresh with a very filled out, very good looking mustache. Jerry, how you doing?
I was going to say, yeah, our refreshed Shea Station is as new as this mustache. I think the podcast will last longer than this mustache, though.
I don't know. I mean, it should be sticking around. Is it bothering you? Is it itchy?
No, I don't know. This is the same reason why my hair changes, why my facial hair changes. I get bored. So we'll see how long it goes.
You're a creature of change, Jerry. I mean, the hair is getting long, though. It's got some length, some flow.
It's, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this either. It's a whole thing. So
it's a whole ordeal.
It's a nice problem to have.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to have.
So I'll take it. It's not a complaint. It's an enjoyable issue.
Absolutely.
I enjoy changing it up.
So we're fresh off the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are back-to-back champions. And that means baseball season is basically here because pitchers and catchers are reporting. One of the new Mets news signings, Shintaro Fujinami, just reported. We'll touch on him. We'll touch on Jake Diekman. We'll touch on a survey that you listening filled out. We had 500 responses. It was basically a outlook survey on the 2024 season and beyond, taking the temperature of the Mets fan base. And I got to say, I was very pleasantly surprised with the optimism and the intellect with a lot of the responses there. So I'm looking forward to covering that. Before we get into all that stuff, if you guys enjoy the Shea Station podcast, consider leaving us a rating, leaving us a review, subscribing to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to take it upon myself to ask more because I feel like it's just something to connect the audience with. So if you enjoy our content, please let us know. We'd really appreciate it. But with all that stuff aside, Jerry, I'm going to let you pick because there's two relievers to choose from between Fujinami and Diekman. There's a lefty here as well. So which guy do you want to touch on first?
Well, they both kind of go in the same ilk, I think. Obviously, Diekman to me is a superior pitcher. He's had sustained success. Fujinami's a wild card guy, throws 100, but you don't know if he's going to strike out the side or walk 11 people. We saw him mow down the Mets last year.
True.
And he had like a 6 at the time, or even higher than that. I think he had like maybe even a double-digit ERA.
Right.
But this is what I like. I like that the fact that a lot of people, a lot of complaints, and a lot of issue we're taking with the Mets bullpen didn't have any like high-end arms outside of the arm talent of Edwin Diaz.
Right.
We didn't have anybody coming up that throws 100, but every other team seems to have guys that can fill in, and they addressed it with two guys. You know, Diekman's going to he just turned 37 not too long ago, but he still throws cheese from the left side. Fujinami touches 100 all the time. This just gives you another look on guys that can pitch at the back end. I'm not sure. Again, Fujinami's a wild card. You don't know what you're going to get with him. Maybe they iron some stuff out. But you know, this is the part of the spectrum that the Mets bullpen especially were missing compared to other places. So I like the addition of high end velocity.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things you touched on that I think were really important there. One is obviously velocity. This was a soft tossing bullpen last year. The Mets didn't have a single pitcher throw out a 100-mile-per-hour pitch last year, which is weird when you think about it because you think of the DeGrom, Syndergaard, Harvey rotations, how we were just pumping out guys who could throw cheese, and now it's been something that we've been deprived of in the recent years, especially with Edwin Diaz going down. Fujinami threw a pitch in triple digits 136 times last year, so beyond the surface stats, which admittedly don't look great. He was one of the least valuable pitchers in baseball last year. But when you look at the peripherals and the stuff that he brings to the table in that vein, you can get excited about it. And when he transitioned to a reliever role, he was a lot better. The A's kind of were just leaving out guys to, just die out there, for lack of a better term. Ken Waldichuk, JP Sears, and Fujinami especially were kind of just, get us 5 innings, see if you can get there, because the A's were clearly not trying to win games, and that just blew up his numbers before he came over to Baltimore. His numbers with Baltimore weren't fantastic, but they were at least better in a reliever role, and you saw some of the more strikeout potential. Velocity went up, walks went down, so there's things to look at and analyze there and get excited about beyond just the velocity itself. But on the surface, it's 2 guys that the Mets invested about $7 million for, and they fill out the bullpen with major league talent. So they didn't lose anybody in the process either. So nothing really to get upset about here. And like you said, it's kind of a wild card with Fujinami. I'm really interested to see what they can kind of unlock here, because now they have one of these bullpens that's sort of like the Tampa Bay Rays, where you have a bunch of different arm angles, a bunch of different velocities, a bunch of different secondary pitches. There's a lot of things that the Mets can come at you with now, and that's part of the reason why I really like the Jake Diekman signing too.
Yeah, I mean, Diekman fits the mold. I mean, he's been doing this for a decade now, being a high-quality lefty. I think he's harnessed his kind of what he does a little bit better over the last few years. But, I mean, the guy is pretty damn good, and he's a lefty, and it's going to help in the National League East big time. I think he's a quality arm with like I said, a high-end talent, and when he's throwing strikes, he's almost untouchable. But he does go through some wildness. He throws so far across his body, so he's pretty devastating. But again, this is something that they were missing as far as velocity, and they've got it now. So I think it's a positive thing, and they've got a few new tricks to pull out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about David Stern's ability to build a bullpen with spare parts throughout his entire tenure with the Brewers. I wouldn't call these guys spare parts by any means, but this is good arm talent that the Mets are bringing into their bullpen. With Diekman, you mentioned the wildness a little bit. Yeah, he had a pretty high walk per 9 rate last year. He had a 6.04. That was bottom 5 in baseball with pitchers with at least 50 innings pitched last year. So control was an issue, but he did come to the Rays pitching factory and basically turned his season around after the White Sox cut him loose. One thing I like for him is that, similar to a guy like Adrian Hauser, he yields a lot of soft contact, and he was doing it more so last year than at any other point in his career. He had a 27.5 hard hit percentage. That was a career low. His average for all the years before was 37%. So a 10% drop just last year in his age 36 season. So maybe he's able to make a late career change or some kind of arsenal adjustment. But it's clear that Diekman, while he's been major league proven for many, many years, made some sort of adjustment last year that yielded better numbers. So I'm really excited for him. It's nice to get another lefty in the fold too, because I feel like he plays off Brooks really well. They do different things very well. And I look up and down this bullpen, man, and I kind of get excited. I look at the bullpen of the Mets as maybe the strongest part of the team right now. I don't know. It feels very well-rounded. Like, the lineup has top heaviness. The rotation has top heaviness. This bullpen, while it has Diaz back at the top, it feels like a really good squad of 8 guys that can get key outs and maybe last longer than the 2023 squad did when we were pulling out guys from AAA very early into the season.
Yeah, definitely better, less question marks than any other place. But defense, to me, the defense is still the best part.
Oh, that's a good
the Mets. But if you're going to count that, I mean, Diekman just misses barrels. He's funky, and he's learned how to harness that. And he started mixing in a changeup, I think, a little bit more often. That's helped him to righties. And I think his walk rate, not to dive too deep into this, but I think his walk rate went up because I think he realizes that he doesn't have to attack everybody. So I think he's learned where to pick his spots a little bit better. And that's something that comes with age and some of the rules changes. So
yeah, definitely. I think that's a good analysis of it because, I don't think he was losing any controls. Velocity's still there. So excited for both these guys. Really curious to see what they're able to bring to the table. Excited to watch them pitch in spring, which feels like it's right around the corner because everyone's getting down there and getting warmed up. There were some off-the-field headlines with the Mets, which kind of feels par for the course whenever you're talking about the Mets year in and year out. There's always something going on beyond the field. There's the ongoing Pete Alonso situation with his extension. It doesn't look like there's going to be any sort of resolution, but David Stearns did drop by on Foul Territory, which is getting crazy player interviews pretty much every day, which is really cool to see. Got some friends over there between Todd and Eric Kratz. Stearns said, I think where we are, where Pete is, we are going to focus on this year. Best thing for us is for Pete to have a good year, and the best thing for Pete is for Pete to have a good year, and then we will go forward from there. So it kind of seems like they're letting this contract year play out. Hopefully we yield some sort of great contract year situation where Pete steps up and earns that contract, whatever the number might be. But yeah, I think no Met fan would have you believe that an extension is getting done before 2024 kicks off.
Yeah, a little bittersweet. At least it is news, but you would love to see him lock it up, Pete, for the long haul. But again, this is a decision, and I don't mind it. You're not going to get him for a discount now,
right?
You know what I mean? You're not going to. You should have did it 3 years ago, maybe even more, and you would have gotten a huge discount. But they've gone this route, and there's no reason to push. I'm in agreement. There's no reason to make it happen now. And I expect Pete to go out and have a very polar bear-ish year and see what it's like out there. Do a Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah.
And go see what other ladies are batting their eyes at you, and then come on home.
Yeah, I mean, it is a kind of a product of Nimmo too, right? He gets his 8-year deal. Diaz gets his 5-year deal. Like, the Mets have invested a lot of money in their core. And like Stearns kind of alluded to, like, we're in a situation where Pete Alonso could go off this year and then get paid or test the market, but the Mets will still be the benefactor of whatever he does in 2024. And I'm hoping that he's able to bounce back from, some lesser numbers last year besides the home runs. And really, he just looked like such a well-rounded hitter going the opposite way all the time in 2022, keeping rallies going, not always needing the home run ball. That Pete Alonso is in there still, and I think that 2024 is going to be a really cool year for him, but it is bittersweet. Like you said, you'd like the safety net of knowing that he's going to be a Met for life, and I still do think that we get there eventually. It's just you have to wait a little bit, and that's a little bit of a bummer. Speaking of bummers, our ex-GM, Billy Eppler, has been suspended for the entire 2024 season. Even though he is without a job currently in MLB, it kind of feels like he's a little bit being made an example of, which I understand. Basically, the situation, for those who don't know, the Cliff Notes version of it is that the Mets came under fire for manipulating the injured list and putting players on there that weren't exactly injured and using that to clear roster space and not have to put players on waivers or designate anybody for assignment. That's not what you're supposed to do. A lot of teams do end up doing it, and a lot of players have openly admitted in interviews and coaches and all that. So it's been kind of a not so well kept secret, an open secret, if you will. And some sort of letter was sent to an MLB front office. There's a lot of hazy details in it. It is very ex-Mets, pre-Cohen Mets a little bit, this entire story. But Eppler cooperated. They're not sure why he was singled out. It's a lot of details like that, but it's an unfortunate situation, although I'm glad that I guess something is being done about it.
Yeah, it looks like he pissed off an intern or something, and the MLB couldn't turn their blind eye. It does. People, they manipulate it. And it's not just an advantage for the team. Sometimes it's an advantage for the player. Say the starting pitcher is really struggling. He has no options. And he doesn't want to accept moving down to the minors because it's a huge pay. There's a whole bunch of things that fall their way.
Right.
They say, all right, you got neck spasms, and then you can go down and iron it out with 2 starts in the minor leagues and come back and be fine. Every team does it. Doesn't make it right. So I'm not sure what if there's any changes that need to be made to it, they'll figure it out. But there's always going to be ways to take advantage of whatever rule there is. But it's technically against the rules, and he's out the year. And it seems like it's kind of been like, hey, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So just handle it, and then next year you'll be fine. So
yeah, it's funny. I was just doing a video on the best prove it deals, basically 1-year deals for guys who are on their last leg in baseball. One of the sections was about Bartolo Colon coming to the Yankees, and part of the reason of how he got his spot in the rotation was Phil Hughes hitting the injured list. And I'm doing my research. I'm looking for quotes as to what it is. And there's just a quote from Joe Girardi saying, yeah, we don't actually think he's injured. It's just he has an ERA of 13. We don't think he's right. So we're going to just going to sit him for a couple weeks. And nothing really happened because that's just kind of how things were for a long time. But I'm glad that there's change coming, I guess, because, this players don't deserve this to happen to them, just to be a victim of roster manipulation. So I guess it's for the greater good. It's unfortunate that it's, of course, the Mets tied to it. But nonetheless, I think it's probably a good thing.
I think it's a good thing, too. We'll figure it out. There'll be some stipulation where it'll be kind of mental health stuff, where if you could figure out whatever it is confidence-wise, you're not ready to pitch in the big leagues and you're only doing yourself and your team harm. So they'll figure it out. But Eppler is being made a scapegoat or a guinea pig, whichever way animal you want to attribute him to, barnyard enthusiast, he's it. So unfortunately for him, or fortunately, depending on if you're a Mets fan and you have some hostility towards him for not a good trade deadline or something, you feel like this is his comeuppance.
I thought he had a good one last year. Maybe not 2022, but I think he had a good one last year.
No, I don't know. He'll be fine. He'll be back in the game. He's a smart baseball mind. This isn't like egregious, Astros trash,
right.
Trash banging scandal. This is just like a slap on the wrist.
Absolutely. All right, enough of that stuff because that's not as fun as the second half to the show, which I'm very excited for. So, for those who don't know, for those who don't follow us on social media, which in that case, follow us on social media. We post a lot. It's a lot of good stuff. I saw Sam Blum of The Athletic, who covers the Angels, good friend of mine that I met at winter meetings. I saw that he posts a survey for Angels fans to fill out year in and year out. He got over 1,000 responses. Basically just, talking to the fan base about where they're at, and I'm sure they're in a lot more turmoil than Mets fans are right now. But I saw that and I thought, what a great idea to do for our Shea Station listeners. So I posted a 10-question survey with various different questions ranging on the team, the ownership, players, all that stuff, and I had you guys answer it. We got over 500 responses, which is absolutely awesome. I thought it was great for people who might be too shy to call in on the mailbag. Now you get your voice heard, so that's awesome. Jerry, you did not fill it out, and you don't know the results, correct?
No, we're going to do this kind of blind. It'll be a fun example. We'll have a good time. I feel like I don't know if you guys are getting bombarded with like political ads and polls and stuff. I mean, it's full swing here. This feels like, one of the, like a political
ballot,
poll. So, well, we're like, how do you feel? So this will be fun.
Did you feel like it was too intimate? I just wanted to get I wanted to make the fans feel welcome,
No, it's perfect. Okay, I love it. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think we should do it, expand it so we can. This is what we're here for. We're here to service what our fans are feeling and help them out. And if they feel a certain way, we're going to figure it out and try to answer some questions that they have. So good.
Absolutely. Yeah, it did make me feel like closer with the people who listen to us because now I know what kind of fans they are. And in fact, they're very similar to us, which is very cool. So the top of the survey was one of the more broad questions. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pose the question. Jerry's going to give his answer and then maybe what answer you think is the most popular too. That could be fun. And then I'll reveal the results and we'll talk about it afterward. But the first question was pretty simple. It was, how confident are you in the Mets' direction as a franchise? And it was 5 different options ranging from very confident to unsure to not confident at all. Jerry, how are you feeling about the direction of the Mets franchise?
I'm feeling very confident. So I'm at the top. If this is a 1 to 5, I'm a 1 or a 5, whichever way you're seeing it. I think it's headed in the right direction. I think the people starts with Steve Cohen. I think he's obviously shown a willingness to do things and also showing a willingness to not do things, which will hamper your franchise. Right. I like where we're going. I like that they got David Stearns. We'll see how they feel, but overall, I'm very confident in the direction of the Mets. That
was the answer for about a third of the people that tuned into the survey, 34%, which was nice. The most popular answer was somewhat confident, which is kind of where I fell. It was 53%, about 260 responses there. The thing I like about this is that not a single person out of the 502 responses we got said not confident at all, which made me feel good because, there is some semblance of a direction, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. So most people fell into the confident range, which didn't necessarily shock me. It's just a tough pill to swallow this year because the Mets are going with a craftier, less spending approach, aiming more so for next year. And I think that after the past 2 years, it's just, it's a completely different mindset. But I'm glad that most people are feeling the way we do about Steve Cohen, about David Stearns, and all that.
I mean, you think about it under previous regimes where this would be. I mean, even in our fan base that tends to be on the positive side, I think there would have been majority on the bottom half on the other end. So it's nice to see that people are at least in agreement. Again, our fan base is a little bit different of a Met fan that gets the most noise. But I think they do see the direction ahead. I think they see a path forward, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that question in like 2018 or something. It's completely flipped. Yes. Yeah, you were there.
I would have given a different answer as well.
All right, second question, still focusing on a little bit of the front office. How would you grade Steve Cohen's tenure as the Mets owner? There was 5 options to this one, ranging from excellent to good to fair to below average to poor. Jerry, how would you grade Steve Cohen's tenure?
There's just this is so vague. There's so many different aspects of what he's done. I'm going to take the broad scope, the macro approach. I'm going excellent.
Nice.
If you're looking at just how the major league team did, then you maybe say fair or good. They did win 101 ball games, make the playoffs. But I'm looking at a structural level from an organization, the upgrades that they've made to the ballpark, the coaching staff, the spring training facilities, top to bottom, everything is being put into better serving the product, the organization. So I think his tenure so far has been excellent. And I feel like most people would be in the good is my guess. But I think for me, I think he's been excellent.
Yeah, you were right. Most people fell into good. That was about 60%, but second most was excellent at 30%, which is nice to see. And it is exactly what you said. It goes beyond just the players on the roster. It's coaching, it's front office, it's all that. And just comparatively to where we were even 5 years ago, I think it's hard not to say he's done a good job. And yeah, one of the most winning seasons in Mets history happened 2 years ago, which it's going to probably be the most winning season of my Mets fandom, which is crazy to think about. 101 wins does not happen very often. 100 wins had only happened twice in Mets history. So I was in the excellent category as well. I'll take good, though. I think good is fair.
Yeah, I mean, I understand good. I'm just taking if we're talking wins, last year was a huge disappointment.
Sure.
So it's hard to give him an excellent grade if if you take in the whole thing. But for me, again, we're talking direction. And I think Steve Cohen's tenure as owner is the first time that everything is pointed with a huge arrow and they're all in the same direction.
Right. Yeah, we had 6 people say below average. No people said poor. So again, overwhelmingly positive, but it's kind of easy for those to get positive responses.
And I understand below average.
Yeah.
They were expecting inside of 5 years. He said he was going to win a World Series, and
it still could happen. I think, right? At 20,
are we in year 5?
Counts. I think we're in year 4 because 21's the first
so he's
year.
got 2 years.
He's got 2 years. Yeah, it could still happen.
Right? Anyway, I understand it.
Yeah. This one was a tough one to answer just because I feel like there has not been a lot of coverage about him in general. Like there was coverage of the hire. We saw him at winter meetings and we haven't seen much of him since. The third question was, how confident are you in new Mets manager Carlos Mendoza? Managers are kind of weird. There's debate on how much effect they have on the game. This was once again a very confident to not confident at all scale, 1 through 5. Jerry, how are you feeling about Carlos Mendoza?
I'm gonna fall right in the middle. I'm gonna go unsure.
Yeah.
And it's not to do with anything negative. I've really enjoyed what I've heard from him. I think it's very positive, but confidence is different. I think I have a good feeling, but if I were to, he's never been a manager before.
Right.
This is the big leagues. This is Queens. You're coming off a terribly disappointing season last year. You've got some big question marks, and you're going to have to face a lot of media scrutiny. So yeah, I fall right in the middle. I'm not confident, but I'm not. I would be more surprised if he fails as a manager by far. So I guess somewhat confident. But if I were to put where I'm at, I'm right in the middle.
Yeah, most people agreed with you. 58% of people said unsure. I said unsure as well because there's really no way to be sure. It's exactly what you said. He's never been a manager before. I do usually really love bench coach hires. It's why I like the Eric Chavez hire in the first place. But yeah, there's no real way to tell. And it's also very dependent on the players and how they perform. You saw that with Buck in his 2 years, how it flipped on a dime pretty much immediately. How quick things can change. So Mendoza, I'm very curious. I'm very excited for him to speak more to the media and hear what he has to say, because I feel like we've only really gotten the tip of that. But most people fell in that. We had 30% say somewhat confident, so it seems like there's some positive aspiration there. But I think it's hard to say really anything else there. I just was curious what people might say there.
I agree. So I understand. And I think Carlos Mendoza would get it too.
Yeah, exactly. So. All right, fourth question before we get to some of the more player stuff. How would you rate the Mets offseason? I was very curious about this one because we have been spinning it pretty positively, I think. I think that's safe to say. We've been enthusiastic about certain moves, less enthusiastic about others. This was on a scale from excellent to poor, just like the second question. Jerry, how would you rate the Mets offseason?
I would say good.
Okay.
And again, this is a macro view. This is a fully pulled out. I'm looking at the David Stearns was this offseason, and I think that's very positive. I don't know if you're watching on the YouTube. But
perfect.
I did the old MacBook. I got the bubble, the thumbs up bubble. I don't think you're going to get it.
I don't know why it doesn't like me. It's crazy.
See if I get another one. Anyway, I'm going to go with good. I think some of the coaching hiring, I think Mendoza could be a very good manager. I think but most of it is for me is on David Stearns because we're all the first couple of questions are pointed to the direction. And I think this points to sustainable success for, a baseball. Your fandom doesn't live and die in 1 year, or it shouldn't. At least mine doesn't.
I hope not.
This is a lifetime, instrument. And I think David Stearns being here, along with obviously Steve Cohen, I think this is pointed in the right direction. So I'm going to give him good. As far as player acquisition goes, I'm going to go below average. I think we've done a decent job of filling in holes, but they never made a big splash. They've got some projects, some guys that might do great things. We had the big Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, and what turned out to be, the Ghost Fork was a great one. But outside of that, we haven't really done much, especially offensively. So
yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Even if you do like the defensive upside, run prevention, bullpen, whatever you want, there was a lot of talent out there, even in a weaker class, and the Mets didn't go after a lot of it. A lot of it just fell out of their price range. But it's like you said, you have to combine the idea that Stearns is here as well. That's a part of this Mets offseason, even if it was confirmed earlier. So I went with good as well, just in that beacon, and 41% of people said that. This was one of the closest votes we had. It was 47% fair, 41% good, and then pretty much less than 15% for everything else. So I think that most Mets fans have that optimism there as well. But yeah, it's no secret that the Mets could have gotten better talent on the roster going into 2024.
I was going to say 0 excellent, right?
I have here 16 votes for excellent, which would be 3%.
Yeah, okay. You got to love some Mets fans. You got to really love it. I'm for that. But if you're thinking, why would you go out and waste, a lot of money on a player you don't believe in, going after like a Blake Snell? If you don't think it's money well spent, then this is a win to not sign a guy. So I get it.
Yeah, it's just weird to put in that context, I guess. It's a win to not sign.
Depends on how you read the question.
Right, exactly. So that one was a little bit polarizing. And the next question I found very interesting as well. The results here are kind of fun to look at. What would you still address in free agency or trades for the 2024 roster, if anything? Now, I left an option at the bottom saying the Mets don't need to add more, and I tried to pick out the 4 most realistic things that they might make a last-minute push for if something like that happens. So the options were third base, designated hitter, starting pitcher, relief pitcher, or the Mets don't need to do anything. Jerry, where did you end up falling here?
Yeah, so the easy answer for me is designated hitter. They need some thunder in that lineup. I think relying upon the youth to kind of figure out if they're I understand it from an organizational standpoint, trying to figure out what you got in a guy like Vientos. Is
Sure.
he going to be able to perform with a bat? But I think you go out and you get a JD Martinez, even though they've kicked the tires on him, they're still probably like, hey, are you going to sign for half of what you deserve? I
Maybe
think
a
that's as
quarter.
far as it's going to get.
Yeah.
That they don't want to insult him with a low ball offer kind of thing.
Sure.
But I think he could provide so much benefit outside of production, teaching some of these guys how to hit, how to be a DH, what it takes. His approach, he's so smart. I love listening to him talk about hitting and talking to some of his teammates that have been around him. I think like even a Justin Turner, if they went out and got him, his approach, his leadership, I think they're going to be missing not just the Thunder in the lineup, but another veteran presence that could provide some guidance to these young guys.
Yeah, I mean,
So for me, a starting pitching would have been easy, but designated hitter is the one that I would have addressed early.
yeah, I mean, first off, JD Martinez hit 33 home runs last year, which I was unaware of until this
Raked.
very moment. Like, that's a lot, man. And I mean, reconnecting with his old hitting coach, we can go down that rabbit hole. But most Mets fans agreed with you. 48% of Mets fans said designated hitter, 27% said starting pitcher, and 12% said the Mets don't need to add more. So third base and reliever were the most or the least voted for. DH, it's so weird because yeah, you do want to see what you have in Vientos. It does feel like he got a shot last year with Beatty and with Alvarez as well, and just wasn't really able to put anything together. But at the same time, a full season is very different. I understand that, and having a role and feeling comfortable in that role, knowing you have security is one thing. DJ Stewart, I think, throws a wrench in the plans too. Although I am rooting for him, I would love it if DJ Stewart was the guy that he was in August for an entire year. We'll see how that pans out. But the Mets, it looks like they're rolling out the platoon DH again, which I think all fans, myself included, are kind of rolling their eyes at because they've been trying to do it for 3 years and it's yet to work between Vogie and Naquin and Ruff and Stewart last year and Vientos now. So we'll see if there's a last minute pivot there. It's insane to me that JD Martinez is still unsigned. So many teams could use a JD Martinez in their lineup, especially the Mets. So we'll see if he settles for a 1-year deal. I doubt that. I feel like someone's got to give him 2, right? He just hit 33 home runs, 103 RBIs, and 900 OPS, and he can't find a contract. I find that hard to believe. And most
Yeah,
Mets
I don't
fans
know.
agree with it.
I don't know. I don't know what he's looking for, but whatever it is, I think the Mets, again, give him a 1-year deal.
It
Let him
changes
come in.
everything for this lineup.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's a miss. That's the one thing I am disappointed with this offseason is their lack of addressing the lineup. And again, I like the variety we're getting from the guys that they're the people that filled out our survey because they have some people that said the Mets don't need to add more. And I think of it, they're probably very in tune with what's going on. And they're
Sure.
like, look, we need to figure out what we got in these guys. So I appreciate that approach. It's just not something I want to watch on a regular basis. And I think the guidance of a veteran bat in the lineup to provide not just the protection for Alonso and guys, but to also just to be there to show another avenue of how to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. You've been nailing the majority responses on these. This, I think, is going to be the toughest one for you to get, so I'm curious to see what you say. I asked, what Mets prospect excited you the most? Now, this one had a ton of options, and I still left an other box in case you wanted to write somebody else, but we have basically the entire Mets top 10 prospects here. Luis Angel Acuna, Drew Gilbert, Jet Williams, Ronnie Mauricio, Parada, Clifford, Vassell, Christian Scott. Which Mets prospect excites you the most? Jerry Blevins.
There's a couple names on here that I don't know. I don't know anything about Ryan Clifford.
Oh, interesting.
Where was he?
He came over in the Verlander trade. He was another piece
Got it.
in addition.
Okay,
to
now the name strikes a little bit.
Yep.
I'm not a minor league guy. I don't know names. To me, you have to establish yourself, and I don't have the capacity to do anything but evaluate the major league talent.
Sure.
I think I can do that more. But the name, obviously, Acuna is one. Having played with Ronald, this would be amazing but that's a lot of hype to kind of live up to.
Yeah.
That's a big shadow from a little brother to kind of step out of. But I'm going with Jet Williams. I mean, everything I've heard It's a big league name first and foremost, but the ability to play up the middle somewhere defensively and to be a speed guy, I think is an exciting aspect of the game today. One that we need and could use. I think he's the obvious answer, and Mauricio would be up there, but I still don't consider him a prospect.
Right. Got a
I
major
think he's
league
a big
look.
leaguer now.
Yeah. And I think he would be on the opening day roster if he was healthy. So it's hard to call him a prospect there. Williams was indeed the most popular answer once again, Jerry. 36% of people said Jet Williams. This one was very split, though. 23% went with me and said Drew Gilbert. I'm very excited for Drew Gilbert. I think he's going to be very good, which is why I like Billy Eppler's trade deadline last year, mostly because they got him, and I'm really excited for him. 17% said Ronnie Mauricio, which is no shock there. And then 16% went with Luis Angel Acuna, which I found interesting because he is the number one prospect in the organization. He has that legacy, he has the name, he has the tools, but didn't really have good numbers when he came over to the Mets last year. So I think there's some apprehension there. But Jet Williams, man, he's fun to look at because the biggest thing for me, in addition to 45 stolen bases, 22 doubles, is that he almost walked more times than he struck out. 104 walks to 118 strikeouts in 120 games. That is a tool that translates. He had a 425 on base percentage from single A to double A in 3 levels.
That's impressive.
It's very
impressive. That's a Brandon Nimmo approach, a skill. That's one of those given to you. That's your approach as a little kid. That's in your DNA. Tell me about Drew Gilbert though. What's got you excited? He's not a big power guy. I know that.
No, yeah, Drew Gilbert is interesting to me because he was top of the list for Astros prospects. That trade almost didn't happen because Drew Gilbert was so sought after, and the Astros were unwilling to part with him. He gets me excited because the Mets haven't had a well-rounded corner outfield bat, in my opinion, since Conforto. I feel like we haven't really. I mean, Nimmo is a different category there, I think, because he's still with the team. But in terms of someone we've developed recently, Gilbert falls into that for me. He's a lefty. He's got a good build. I'm curious to see if he can also come around on plate discipline, because I think that's one of the scarier things for him right now. He had, what do we have here? A 381 on base, which is really nice. It was a nice jump from what he had before. And he's going to be ready soon. I think that's another reason why I'm kind of looking out for him. He's going to be in AAA this year. He could crack the club if a couple of roster moves go his way, or if he really performs well. But he's got tools, man. I mean, the power's got to come through a little bit more, but he's got stolen base potential. He's got the plate discipline. There's just a lot to like. And I think that him jumping up the rankings really quickly excites me as well. And I there's a lot of faith you have to place there too, because you don't really know, like you said, until they crack the major league roster. But for Jet, I mean, Jet burst onto the scene and was able to make the top 100 this year, which not a lot of Mets prospects have been doing lately. So I understand why the Mets fan base is most excited for him, especially because he plays outfield too. He's just like McNeil. He's up the middle. He's in the outfield. He's drawing walks. He's getting hits. The Mets have some really exciting young players. It's cool.
Good.
This one was not polarizing at all, this next one. So instead of asking you what you're going to go with, because I know what you're going to go with, I'm going to ask you what you think the percentage is, because it's high.
I got to go. I'm going to go. It's in the 90s.
So the question is, what young Mets player do you have the most confidence in? This is basically which baby Met are you buying stock into? The 3 options were Alvarez, Beatty, and Vientos, because they're really the only 3 options. Francisco Alvarez was the overwhelming favorite because of what he demonstrated power-wise last year, the catcher position, all that stuff. Where do you think the number falls for Alvarez?
Yeah, I'm saying in the 90s. I'm going to say 92%.
You're lowballing him. It was 97% people. 467 of 502 voted for Francisco Alvarez. It's not shocking to see why. I wanted to touch on this for 2 reasons. One, because Alvarez is the player in general, outside of young Met or old Met, that I'm most excited for in 2024. I think he's going to take a big leap this year. I'm excited to see another full season of him. No Scherzer, Verlander pressure. I just want to see more consistency, drawing more walks, all that kind of thing. And I think he's so young that we haven't seen the best of him by any stretch of the imagination. But it's also concerning because while Mets fans don't believe that they needed to address third base in free agency, there's very evident information here that shows the Mets fans are not confident in the third base situation, but they know this is how things are going to go. It's going to be Beatty and Vientos getting the keys for 2024. And it's weird to think that at that Brett Beatty home run in Atlanta, it feels like it was yesterday. It felt like, oh, this kid's going to be for real. So it's really important to me that Beatty gets out to a better start this year than he did last year. There's going to be ebbs and flows. It's not going to be perfect, but this is still a guy that can be a major leaguer, but he needs to win the fan base back, I think.
Yeah, my confidence in Beatty's a lot higher than most people. I think, dude, hitting in the big leagues is the hardest thing to do.
I've never done it.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to do in sports, and you're trying to do it. There's a lot of pressure on you, whatever the case may be. I still like him as a prospect, but Alvarez is the easy. 97 makes sense because he had success. He didn't have a great year last year, but he had a great year if you think about it.
Right.
And he has superstar potential. I mean, this guy could be on the cover of the video game next year.
Hope so.
You know what I mean? That kind of superstardom. And he's doing more English, by the way.
Yeah, which is
I don't know
really
if you caught
cool.
that.
Yeah,
he did an interview, in SNY, and he's putting in work. And it just shows you the type of work ethic this guy has, what he wants to be. And I think some of his lull he had last year is the immaturity of a team that's not in it anymore.
Right.
And he wants the bright lights. And, he'll learn how to keep the gas, put the foot on the gas, even when you're not doing great because you're a professional. But I think when the Mets have a good team, this kid is going to be even better, a playoff type juggernaut. So I'm super excited for Alvarez.
Yeah, gets me excited just thinking about it. We have 3 more questions left here. This one was another big time polarizing one. I'm actually surprised with how this one came out, so I'm curious to see what you say. We asked, what Mets newcomer do you have the most confidence in? The base answers here were Severino, Manaea, Hauser, so the 3 new starters, and then Harrison Bader and Tyrone Taylor, plus an option to put in your own answer. And we got a lot of custom answers here as well that I'm kind of going to try and group together. So Jerry, what Mets newcomer are you most excited for?
Most excited for? That's a good one. The question is actually most confidence in.
Oh, yeah, I guess they are different questions there. I went with excited brain here, I think.
Most confidence in for me is Adrian Hauser. I think he's just a solid, more established, sustained success kind of guy. Sure. Obviously, he's got, some issues coming up, but everybody else has got a big question mark. You got Severino injury and a terrible year last year. You got Manaea, who was up and down and had a really rough year, but kind of turned it on. You've got Bader with his injury history.
Sure.
You don't know Tyrone Taylor exactly what you're going to get from Tyrone Taylor. So Adrian Hauser, for me, is more of the most confidence because you get who, he's kind of established on who he is and what he's done in the past. So
totally. Most Mets fans put him 4th here. He came in 4th place with 15% of votes. The most confident answer was Sean Manaea, 33.5%. Kind of makes sense when you look at the past resume, those really good years in Oakland and how he finished last year. But I thought we'd see a little more love for Sevy just based on that same reason, past evidence. But I think last year was just so rough for him that it's hard to...
On top of injuries.
Exactly. It's hard to put him right back into that category. So he finished with 21%. Harrison Bader was the second most popular answer at 25%. But Manaea comes out on top. And then a lot of love in the custom answer for Fujinami, who finishes with about 15%. So really cool for him because I think that's wild card upside, a lot of stuff there. Who knows what you're going to get? But Fujinami being that popular kind of took me by surprise. I guess I should have put him as an option.
I'm blown away that Fujinami, most confidence and most excited for. I could see that because of his 100-mile-an-hour fastball. But I guess that surprises me because my confidence in him is not there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a hard time, especially coming out of the bullpen with guys that don't throw strikes. So unless he's figured that out, but I get Harrison Bader. I think Harrison Bader, I thought he would be number 1 because he's had success. He's a big leaguer. He's got incredible defense. Mets fans are in for a treat to watch this guy play in the outfield.
Sure. Yeah.
But for me, it was Hauser because of, this is a guy that we need to take the ball every 5th day.
Yeah. And I mean, he's been doing it for the past 3 years at this point. So
you
know who he is at this point. And everyone else pretty much is a wild card with just 2023 and all that. This one was fun. to see the parody here, but there is a clear favorite, and I'm pretty sure everyone's favorite. Which impending free agent do you want the Mets to sign the most? The core answers were Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Alex Bregman, Zach Wheeler, and Max Fried, and there was an option to fill in your own answer because there's a ton of different options. Jerry, what free agent at the end of the season would you like to see the Mets bring on?
You didn't put Alonso in here?
I didn't put Alonso in here. A little bit of like he'll be extended by then.
Yeah, that's fair. It's easy. It's Juan Soto.
Yeah.
This is a Juan Soto answer for me. The guy's special. He's still like 16 years old, I think. He's so young and so talented and a left-handed hitter. I want him on the team so bad. Like, I truly do. I think he would be an incredible Met. He's a future Hall of Famer. Incredible. Outside of Juan Soto, I think he's the easy answer. I'd go Corbin Burns after that for me.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, between Alonso, between Soto, between Burns, any one of these guys could be extended and they could be off the table. Juan Soto, by the way, 1.165 OPS in his career at Citi Field, so he'd fit right in. He likes.
Yeah, we've seen him do it firsthand too many times.
Just saying. He lands at 53%. I was a little shocked to see how low Alex Bregman was. Bregman came in at 6%, so again, that's that third base situation with the Mets. And then the most popular other answers were basically the starters. They all had at least 10% between Fried, Wheeler, and Burns. Wheeler reunion might be nice. Would be nice to see.
That'd be cool. He seems like I haven't talked to him, nor will I ask him about that. But
Philly
he seems
lifer?
like a discount guy going back to Atlanta because he lives close.
Oh, interesting. Oh, you wait, Fried or Wheeler?
Wheeler, I mean.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
To me, Wheeler feels like, I want to pitch and sleep in my own house. I'll take $10 million a year.
I would. Oh my God, that's amazing.
That would be that's what happens to the Braves.
Sure.
So.
Other popular answers here were Shane Bieber. Pete Alonso got mentioned, of course, because he is technically a free agent, which feels like a bad sentence. And then Walker Buehler made some appearances as well, but mostly people are on the Juan Soto train. Mm-hmm. That is going to be an Ohtani-esque, maybe even more so, type of bidding war. A lot of teams could use a Juan Soto to turn around the trajectory of their franchise, Mets included. So hopefully the lesser spending of this offseason is for that exact reason. We will see. And then,
I like the Walker Buehler. That's interesting. I didn't even think about.
I mean, he could be. I don't know. We don't really know what this year is going to be for him.
He's also young. We'll see what he's got. Super young.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what he brings to the table this year. And the Dodgers have
besides
10
tight pants.
Besides tight pants, you're going to get that. Him and Robbie Ray. That's it. All right, one last question before we wrap up the show. The one everyone's been waiting for. How many wins will the Mets finish with in 2024? I was super curious to see how negative fans would go on this one, because it's clear the roster is not what it was in 2022 or even the start of 2023 in terms of name value and talent. The 5 choices you had were more than 90 wins: 85 to 89, 80 to 84, 75 to 79, 70 to 74, or less than 70 wins. It's actually 6 options. I lied. Jerry, how many wins are the Mets finishing with this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna take 80 to 84. I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's maybe a little bit positive. There's a lot going on, but again, this is a talented roster. Their bullpen just got solidified, and that's where you win a lot of those close games. And there's some really not very good teams out there to play on the regular basis. That a team like the Mets, even though they don't feel like they have that high end 100-win season in them, they should beat up on some very poor teams. So I'm going 80 to 84.
That's where I landed too, and turns out that's where most of Shea Station listeners landed as well. 45.5% landed there. 42% said 85 to 89. So 42% of fans think we're getting not only a winning season, but potentially a contention for a playoff spot, which I thought was
good for them.
Cool. Exactly, because there's, like you said, if you beat up on the bad teams, the possibilities are endless. But the Mets have to do that first and foremost before worrying about big bad Braves, Dodgers, Phillies, all those teams. We had 32 votes for 75 through 79, which I thought was a little low, because I think realistically that's probably, if not everything goes according to plan,
I think
that's where the Mets probably land.
Gawky.
But that's only 6%, and then we had 19 votes for more than 90 wins, which was about 4%. So shout out to you Mets fans who think we're getting a 91
I love you
season.
guys.
I hope
Do
you guys
that.
are right. I hope
Be
you guys.
that. That's what you should be. You should feel great. I'm in the land here in Ohio. Every Cleveland fan, all of the Cleveland sports, from the Browns to the Guardians to the Cavs, every year we're winning the Super Bowl, we're winning the World Series. We're the best. We're going to win everything, regardless.
Yeah.
I'm talking Johnny Manziel, Tim Couch era.
You never know.
Browns. They're still every year they're let down. They're like, man, I thought we had it this year.
Joe Flacco.
You know?
Never know.
Flacco almost did it.
And only 2 votes for less than 70 wins. So those 2 Mets fans down in the dumps. Hopefully your mood changes with spring training. Hopefully we get a little more optimism there. But that does it for our survey. I like that most of our listeners have pretty much the same Mets brain that we do. A lot of cautious optimism. We can see the path of winning baseball, but we do have to see it first. We got to see it out on the field. And I think there's a lot to be excited about with this squad.
Thank you guys so much. Over 500. That's awesome. And thank you for listening to us. We tend to have a very engaging audience, and we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we do. This was a fun episode. If you guys enjoyed it, consider leaving us a rating or subscribing to the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it. But that is all we got. We'll probably see you again in a couple weeks for another episode of Shea Station, or if some news happens, you never know. But we'll see you then. Thank you for listening.
We'll be ready.
We'll be ready.
Bye.
Jerry and Charlie, Shea Station. Jerry and Charlie, thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time, where we'll be back.
Shea Station.